Since the advent of blockchain, game companies have been looking for ways to exploit them in order to further monetize and nickel and dime customers and players. And that's why they're promoting this propaganda that NFTs are the way of the future for gaming, that the Metaverse is going to be a key player for the future of gaming. And so you've got companies like Facebook or Meta promoting games like Horizon Worlds for MetaQuest 2, which is essentially their take on the Metaverse. And this is the teaser trailer that shows you an exaggerated fake version of the game. Let's check it out real quick. So here's what that looks like.
Welcome to a place of limitless possibilities.
I mean, even in this
you can invent things.
exaggerated form, this game doesn't look particularly enticing.
Forge new experiences.
And part of the whole idea is,
With others.
you can make your own NFTs and sell them and trade them and all that jazz.
Here, you can find your community.
It's all about
Creators.
play to earn instead of play to have fun.
And virtually hang out in perfect harmony.
This is just so unappealing. This is just like Second Life or PlayStation Home. Except experiences like that have already existed.
Your artistry.
They're MMOs that are
Your genius.
an online environment where players can gather and play in a virtual environment.
And together, we can build Horizon.
Now with the Metaverse, they're like trying to replace aspects of real life and have that all take place in a virtual environment. As a form of escapism, video games are cool, but anytime you try to like have real life elements like earning money and all this other jazz like seeping into them, it's no longer an escape. It's just an alternate form of something, a worse version of real life. One where companies get to exert control. And there are actually gameplay videos out there showing this game in action. And you can see just how much worse it looks from the trailer, which already looks pretty bad. So here is an example from YouTuber Otterworldly. And I mean, my God, look at this desolate hellscape. Look at how uncanny and disturbing and hollow this experience looks. It's all so just artificial, and it all looks like a tech demo, like a cheap shovelware tech demo, rather than a full-fledged experience. This is what Facebook is advertising as the future, and there's some mini games in there that amount to nothing more than tech demos, nothing super fleshed out. If you want to have a proper shooter VR experience, there are a number of dedicated games out there that will fulfill that. Here's another video showcasing what this game looks like. Just, again, I mean, these graphics are from, like, PlayStation 2, Wii era. There's just a lack of environmental compellingness. There's just a lack of anything here that seems enticing in any way, shape, or form. I don't know why you'd want to hang out in these streets. God, I mean, it all looks like a prototype. As for how Facebook has been doing since they have shifted their brand to Meta and have leaned all in on the Metaverse, well, not particularly well. Financially, they've been losing quite a bit of money from this endeavor, and their revenue comes nowhere close to making up for the expenditure. As stated here by the following headline from news outlet GameDeveloper.com that reads, Meta burned $2.96 billion on Reality Labs last quarter. Meta spending more and more money on Reality Labs in a bid to manifest the Metaverse, except nobody's really interested in it. Facebook or Meta has yet to really justify why Horizon Worlds and their Metaverse endeavors is something we partake in on a daily basis. What makes it more compelling than the myriad other gaming experiences that exist out there that do a similar kind of online environment, but in a far more enticing way? So here are the financial results as reported by this article from back in April 27th, 2022. Meta's first quarter financial results for 2022 are here, and a bit mind-boggling. Its Reality Labs division is losing almost $3 billion a quarter, $2.96 billion to be precise, while only pulling in about $650 million in revenue. That's a net loss of $2.3 billion this last quarter alone. In the first quarter of 2021, Meta Reality Labs had lost $1.8 billion while pulling in $534 million in revenue. So expenses keep getting higher and higher, and revenue is nowhere close to meeting that. It's accelerating nowhere near at the rate that it should be. Roughly 17,000 employees are plugging away on Reality Labs products, which is a big portion of that expenditure. Meta's overall business, it's still not driving the company into the red. Its overall revenue for the 3-month period ending March 31st, 2022 was $27 billion, mostly driven by $26 billion in revenue from the Facebook family of apps. So while Facebook and Meta as a company isn't going under, the VR and their Metaverse endeavors, specifically just honing in on that, you'll see a significant financial loss incur there, because they're just unable to bolster revenue and get enough people interested in the metaverse. It's just not in a fleshed out state, and they have yet to present a compelling reason for why people would jump on board this concept that seems more like an impedance than something that's actually beneficial or something that's fun for that matter. Now, one of the barriers that Meta faces is their over-reliance on VR, which hasn't been adopted on a mass level yet. They're still too expensive. They're still too niche. And the over-reliance on that means that Meta and their game here, Horizon Worlds, is just not something that's all that accessible, which is why it would seem as though Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg has said that a browser-based version of Horizon Worlds is coming later this year to try to, I guess, bolster the player base there. But it's clear that their ultimate goal is to make the VR experience the de facto experience. One of Meta's goals, for example, is for Horizon Worlds users to be able to use a virtual reality headset like Quest 2 or Project Cambria, this other headset that they're working on. Their facial expressions will be translated onto their in-world digital avatars. This was part of this argument that the VR versions of Horizon Worlds would be the peak experience for the Metaverse app. I don't know if I'd ever trust a company like Facebook or Meta, who have an extensive track record of abusing the data that they've collected to additionally, on top of everything else, track my facial expressions. And from this next paragraph, you can really see the ultimate goal of this game, which is to establish an environment where players will be engaging financially and trading NFTs and making money that way, a portion of which obviously will go to Meta. There's kind of a confounding loop to Zuckerberg's argument. Horizon Worlds and VR needs users. Users need content. That content will supposedly come from creators making cosmetic items and experiences, except said creators will apparently need to pay up to 47.5% in fees to sell those virtual experiences. Essentially, half of the revenue that they generate will go to Meta, will go to Facebook, which obviously isn't a good incentive for players to spend all this time and effort making content for a game that's going to take such a huge portion of the pie. As this article aptly put it, creators and developers would make less money than would on other platforms. So on top of the metaverse being quite unappealing as a concept, and what Facebook has executed on the metaverse front being very unappealing as well, it doesn't offer anything particularly compelling even as a play-to-earn experience. And so general interest surrounding the metaverse is still very niche. It's not expanding at a rate that Facebook is hoping, and that's why they've incurred losses in the billions. And beyond that, their VR endeavors have cost them tens of billions since 2020. As Kotaku reported here, Facebook's latest financial results show it has lost nearly $20 billion to VR since 2020. More specific data can be found by scrolling down to this paragraph, which reads, in 2021 alone, Meta lost $10 billion via its VR business. In that same year, it brought in revenue of $2.3 billion, less than what it's lost in just the first quarter of this year. And remember, in 2020, Meta's VR division burned an additional $6 billion. Their VR endeavors haven't been particularly profitable either, in large part because VR has yet to receive mass adoption. The technology still has some ways to go before it's really fleshed out, and also again because of things like price point and general inaccessibility of the technology. But at the very least, VR as a gaming medium and as an educational medium and as a tool has a lot of potential, whereas the metaverse, that's one area where I'm like, I don't see how this is anything new, first of all, And secondly, how this is going to appeal to the masses. It just feels like a fad that'll come and go, kind of like how 3D glasses were advertised to be as the biggest thing, the new wave for the future of cinema, only for that fad to die out. But this metaverse concept doesn't actually seem to offer anything except for a playground for major corporations to be able to exploit customers and to make additional profits through nefarious business tactics. But yeah, suffice to say that the losses incurred in the VR and the metaverse division has made investors skeptical and a number of entities as well, which I'll get to in a bit. But here's an article from The Verge whose headline reads, Mark Zuckerberg wants to spend big on the metaverse, but investors are skeptical, published on April 27th, 2022. Scrolling down, we'll find additional details. Mark Zuckerberg told the world last October that he was all in on the metaverse. Now that his company's stock price has been hammered in recent months, he's dialing back that rhetoric. You look at Facebook or Meta stock right now, you can see a huge crash right here that started at the beginning of this year, and since then it's been kind of wavering. The crash happened around the time that Facebook rebranded to Meta and began to hardcore pursue this concept of the metaverse, but with not much really to show for it, which has scared investors away. And now it would seem as though Meta CEO himself is beginning to grow weary and skeptical about leaning all in on the metaverse, about putting too many eggs in that basket. And it's a kind of hesitation we've seen spread far and wide across the games industry, with developers, studios, and publishers being less keen on shoving in NFTs or metaverse elements, as they know that they're going to get backlash. EA CEO Andrew Wilson at one point sang the same tune that Mark Zuckerberg at one point did, that NFTs and metaverse are the way of the future. Now he's kind of backpedaled and said, maybe we're going to reassess some things and see where the NFT landscape goes before leaning all in on it. At least for now, it's not quite the lucrative business venture that the executives of Facebook and Meta expected it to be. Zuckerberg straight up said during the company's first quarter earnings call that they're going to slow the pace of some of our investments due to our current business growth levels. Indeed, while Meta and Facebook have remained stable as an overall company despite incurring losses in areas like VR and Metaverse, their growth, which is what investors care about, has certainly been kind of topping off. You can see right here, The Verge reports Meta's profits for the first quarter were $7.5 billion, down 21% from the year ago period. Revenue rose 7% to $27.9 billion, the slowest growth rate since the company went public a decade ago. And with investors worried about how much Meta and Facebook are spending on these endeavors that don't seem to be panning out, The Verge reports its target expense range for 2022 was lowered by $3 billion. As a way to try to mitigate investors' skepticisms, given that Meta's investors are uncomfortable right now with that level of spending, especially when the payoff is years away, if that payoff even comes at all. Indeed, Meta and Facebook are playing the long game. They probably know on some level that they're going to incur losses in the initial stages of trying to normalize the metaverse. But if the metaverse does not come to fruition, which isn't unlikely given how many people just straight up don't like the concept of the metaverse and the implementation of NFTs and how blockchain is being used for all the wrong reasons. If the concept of the metaverse doesn't take off in the next few years like many companies are hoping it will, then yeah, these companies are going to incur quite the losses and look like quite the fools. But yeah, you combine negative factors like the stock price plummeting by nearly 50% since the start of this year, with the company growing slower than ever, thanks in large part to younger users fleeing the service and other companies like TikTok eating away at their audience base, Apple's ad tracking changes costing Meta more than $10 billion in revenue, regulators blocking Mark Zuckerberg's ability to make big transformative acquisitions in social media that could jumpstart growth again, Facebook growing slower than ever, which is emphasized over and over again, so on and so forth. The first ever drop in daily users for the first quarter of 2021. On top of the metaverse aspect of Meta really just not taking off at the level that investors were hoping for. And it's no surprise that Wall Street has in general lowered their expectations for Meta. And on top of that, a number of CEOs from other companies have kind of spoken out against Meta's Metaverse endeavor. Snap CEO finally calls the Metaverse what it is, reads this article from Gizmodo, and scrolling down you'll find a quote from him. One of the big overarching concepts people have is that a lot of those tools are designed to replace reality. Our fundamental bet is that people actually love the real world. They want to be together in person with their friends. Indeed, and don't get me wrong, people still play video games with each other when they're far apart through online environments, and that's cool and all, but that's never a replacement to actually hang out. Generally, when people have the opportunity to hang out, they will go ahead and do that because that's the most direct form of communication. And the metaverse will never, ever be able to replace that. At best, it can be another form of gaming, except Facebook is trying to turn gaming into a play-to-earn kind of environment. Here's another bit of criticism from Appian Co. CEO Matthew Ball, who said that I think the primary criticism level towards Meta's plans for the metaverse is that they are excessively VR or immersive VR centric. A number of different individuals in this space don't see virtual reality as imminent nor a requirement, like Epic Games with Fortnite and Roblox and whatnot, who kind of keep a traditional gaming experience. But VR-centric or no, the metaverse experiences that are out there like Fortnite, at the end of the day, those are just video games that people partake in to have some fun online and for some escapism. But is Fortnite ever going to become something that's going to replace real-life interactions? Hell no. The optics surrounding Meta's metaverse endeavors gets even worse when even employees are not digging the way Mark Zuckerberg is handling all of this and are not confident about there being any kind of concrete plans. Mark Zuckerberg's metaverse obsession is driving some current and former Facebook employees nuts. It's the only thing Mark wants to talk about. And some of the highlights include Facebook's founder is interested in little but metaverse, current and former employees say. Zuckerberg last year shifted focus to building what he sees as the future of the internet. There is still no coherent strategy, one employee said, which doesn't surprise me one bit, because anytime game companies or companies in general are asked about what makes NFTs and the metaverse unique, what is this going to ultimately enable or open the doors for, they don't really have any kind of concrete answer. They'll say, oh, well, it'll allow you to do X, Y, and Z. And usually the retort will be, well, you can already do those things without NFTs and metaverse. You're actually offering nothing new here. You're just disguising stuff we've already done before with a new buzzword so you can sell it as something new. So you can get the hype going, hype that companies want to use to promote their next monetization scheme as the next big thing that we absolutely need. Just the idea that the metaverse is the future of the internet, when the internet, even without metaverse elements, even without VR interaction, just through text can be a pretty ugly place. And through voice over IP, when you're playing video games, through voice chat, there are already plenty of hideous and disgusting interactions there. And in the VR environment, you can bet your ass that stuff's already happening, with reports like this from April 26, 2022, that talks about all of the awful abuses that are rampant in the metaverse because people are anonymous online. So they're not going to treat it like a person-to-person interaction because there are no consequences to being an asshole online. Except now the assholes have their full range of body motion represented through their avatar that they can use to make people even more uncomfortable or be even more insulting, and stuff like that has kind of just been rampant and an issue that companies currently don't have much of a solution for. Here's another article from The Guardian that basically echo similar sentiments, also published just a few days ago. This one from April 25th, 2022. You can read the headline for yourself. It's impossible to foresee a scenario where this virtual second life will be a more pleasant one than the real life, which already comes with its own struggles and its own ugly aspects. Now, I cannot predict the future. Who knows? Maybe they'll find some way to normalize this stuff to increase the hype enough that there will be mass adoption. I certainly hope not, unless there's a good reason and they can present good justifications for it that doesn't just involve companies benefiting from exploited customers. But to me, it just seems doubtful that that will happen. To me, it seems doubtful that there will be a justification to choose frickin' this crap right here, Horizon Worlds, over the myriad other shared world or online games that are out there that are far more fun and present far more enticing scenarios. I might as well go play Final Fantasy 14 than play this crap. So yeah, with all said and done, it pleases me to see that the metaverse, at least so far in the short term, has been a failing endeavor for Facebook and Meta, and fingers crossed that that's how it stays, as with the current explanation and presentation of what the metaverse is and how it's going to be used by these companies.